Million years ago, this planet ran a different operating system entirely. The continents were fused into a single landmass. The oceans were one vast unbroken body of water. The atmosphere carried more carbon dioxide than modern lungs could comfortably process. And the creatures that walked the land bore no resemblance to anything alive today. But somewhere in that alien world, something was changing. Something small, something that moved differently from everything around it. Something that held its legs directly beneath its body instead of sprawling outward like a lizard. Something that could stand up straighter, move faster, breathe more efficiently than any competitor it shared the land with. That something was the beginning of the most extraordinary evolutionary dynasty in the history of complex life on Earth. Not the most powerful dynasty at first. Not the largest. Not the most fearsome. In the beginning, they were small, cautious, and outnumbered by creatures far more established than themselves. But they had something that none of their competitors possessed in quite the same combination. Adaptability, structural efficiency, and time. 165 million years of time. To put that number in context, consider this. The entire history of primates, from the earliest monkey-like creatures all the way to modern humans, spans roughly 55 million years. The dinosaurs outlasted that 3 times over. They survived not one but multiple extinction-level events. They spread to every continent. They evolved into shapes and sizes that biology has never replicated since. They dominated every ecosystem they entered, and reshaped the very landscape of the planet in ways that geology still records today. And then, in a single afternoon measured against geological time, they were gone. Almost. This is the story of that entire journey, from the first small ancestors trembling in the shadow of more dominant reptiles, through the most spectacular expansion of animal life Earth has ever witnessed, to the apocalyptic ending that most people think they understand, but almost certainly do not. 20 minutes. 250 million years. The complete story of the dinosaurs. Buckle in. Before we meet the dinosaurs themselves, we need to understand the world they were born into. Because the dinosaurs did not appear in a vacuum. They were the product of a specific set of conditions, a specific catastrophe, and a specific group of ancestors that had been quietly waiting for their moment. Travel back 252 million years. Before the Triassic period even began, the Earth at this moment is in the final stages of the most devastating extinction event in its entire history. Not the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs later. Something far worse. The Permian-Triassic extinction. The Great Dying. In a geological blink of an eye, approximately 96% of all marine species and 70% of all terrestrial vertebrate species were wiped from existence. The cause was a cascade of catastrophes centered on massive volcanic eruptions in what is now Siberia. The Siberian Traps, a volcanic event so enormous that it pumped enough carbon dioxide and sulfur into the atmosphere to trigger runaway greenhouse warming, ocean acidification, and the collapse of virtually every food chain on the planet simultaneously. The world that came out the other side of that catastrophe was barren, simplified, emptied of most of its complexity, and that emptiness created the greatest opportunity in the history of land vertebrates. Into that emptied world stepped a group of reptiles known as archosaurs. The ruling reptiles. A broad category that encompassed many body plans and many lifestyles. Within this group, 2 major lineages would eventually diverge and define the shape of all vertebrate life for the next 250 million years. One lineage led to crocodilians, creatures that have remained extraordinarily successful for over 200 million years, precisely because their body plan worked so well that evolution saw no reason to significantly change it. The other lineage led somewhere else entirely. The defining physical characteristic that separated the dinosaur ancestors from their crocodilian cousins was a structural modification so seemingly simple that it is easy to underestimate. Leg posture. Crocodilians sprawl. Their legs extend outward from the sides of their bodies, requiring significant muscular effort to lift the torso off the ground with every single step. It works, but it is metabolically expensive, and it limits both speed and sustained activity. The dinosaur lineage developed an upright posture, legs positioned directly beneath the body like columns supporting a structure from below. This single change had cascading consequences. More efficient locomotion, lower energy cost per stride, greater capacity for sustained movement, and most critically, freed forelimbs. When your front legs are no longer needed primarily for support and locomotion, they become available for other purposes. Grasping, manipulating, eventually, in one extraordinary lineage, flying. This was the mechanical foundation on which an empire would be built. Now we arrive in the Triassic period, roughly 252 to 201 million years ago. And the first thing you need to understand is that the early dinosaurs were not impressive. Not yet. The Triassic world was hot, dry across most of its interior. The supercontinent Pangaea dominated the globe, and its enormous interior landmass created vast arid zones far from any ocean moisture. The vegetation was unlike anything familiar today. No flowering plants. No grasses. Vast forests of ferns, horsetails, and cycads. Coniferous trees beginning to spread across higher ground. And in this world, dinosaurs were not the dominant creatures. Not even close. The early Triassic was ruled by other archosaurs. Rauisuchians, large powerful predators that looked superficially like crocodiles but walked upright. Atosaurs, heavily armored plant-eaters, various other reptile groups that had survived the Great Dying and were consolidating their hold on the recovering ecosystems. The first true dinosaurs appeared roughly 230 to 240 million years ago. And they were small. Eoraptor lunensis, one of the earliest confirmed dinosaurs, found in Argentina, about 1 meter long, 3 to 5 kilograms. It moved on 2 legs and was likely omnivorous, eating insects, small vertebrates, and plant material opportunistically. Herrerasaurus esquigualastensis was somewhat larger, up to 6 meters long in the biggest specimens. A predator, but even this creature was operating at the margins of an ecosystem dominated by other reptile groups. What the early dinosaurs had was not size, not dominance, not numbers. They had efficiency. That upright posture meant they could sustain activity levels that their competitors could not match over long periods. In an environment that was hot and unpredictable, the ability to keep moving, keep hunting, keep foraging when sprawling competitors were forced to rest was an edge that compounded over millions of years. And then the Triassic gave the dinosaurs the gift they needed to go from marginal players to absolute rulers. It killed almost everything else. Approximately 201 million years ago, at the boundary between the Triassic and Jurassic periods, the Earth convulsed again. The Central Atlantic Magmatic Province, a massive volcanic system that erupted as Pangaea began to fracture and pull apart. The scale of these eruptions was extraordinary. Lava fields covering millions of square kilometers. Carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide pumped into the atmosphere in quantities that destabilized the global climate severely. The result was another mass extinction, not as catastrophic as the Great Dying of the Permian, but devastating enough to reshape the biological landscape of the planet permanently. The Rauisuchians that had dominated the Triassic, gone. The Atosaur, gone. Most of the large amphibians that had survived from earlier periods, gone. the large predatory reptiles that had kept the dinosaurs in check, occupying the apex predator roles that dinosaurs had been unable to access. All gone. And the dinosaurs survived. Not because they were the toughest creatures alive, not necessarily because they were the most intelligent or the most perfectly adapted to immediate conditions, but because their efficient locomotion, their varied diets, their ability to sustain activity across a range of environmental conditions gave them just enough resilience to come through the bottleneck while their competitors did not. When the dust settled at the beginning of the Jurassic period, the dinosaurs looked around at a world that had just been cleared of its gatekeepers. Every apex predator role vacant, every large herbivore niche open, every ecosystem on every continent available. And the dinosaurs walked in and took all of it. The Jurassic period. 201 to 145 million years ago, 56 million years of the most spectacular biological expansion the land has ever witnessed. As Pangaea continued to break apart, the climate shifted. More coastlines meant more moisture reaching the interior of the landmasses. The brutal aridity of the Triassic gave way to a warmer, wetter, greener world. Vast coniferous forests spread across the continents. Ferns carpeted the forest floors, and into this lush world, the dinosaurs erupted. The word that defines the Jurassic is scale. The sauropods. The long-necked, long-tailed, quadrupedal giants that represent the popular image of the Jurassic world more than any other group. These creatures broke every previous record for terrestrial animal size and then kept breaking it, again and again, across millions of years of refinement. Brachiosaurus altithorax, a creature that stood roughly 12 meters at the shoulder. Total length estimated at 26 meters. Weight estimates range from 30 to 60 metric tons depending on the methodology used. Its neck alone reached heights that no other land animal has ever achieved. It did not graze at ground level. It fed at the canopy level of tall coniferous forests, accessing food that nothing else could reach. But how does a land animal reach these sizes? Why does biology allow it? The answer lies in a combination of factors that the sauropods exploited with extraordinary success: their bird-like respiratory system. Unlike mammals, which breathe by expanding the chest and creating negative pressure to draw air into the lungs, sauropods almost certainly breathed using a flow-through system similar to modern birds. Air moved continuously in one direction through air sacs distributed through the body. This system is dramatically more efficient at oxygen extraction than the mammalian tidal breathing pattern. Combined with hollow bones that reduced weight without sacrificing structural strength, the sauropods achieved sizes that mammalian biology, for reasons related to respiratory efficiency, has never been able to replicate. Diplodocus carnegie. Body length up to 32 meters, one of the longest land animals ever documented. Its tail alone measured over 13 meters, likely used as a counterbalance and possibly as a defense weapon capable of producing a supersonic crack when whipped at speed. Supersaurus vivianae. Potentially the longest dinosaur yet discovered. Fragmentary remains suggest a body length that may have approached 33 to 34 meters. But size alone does not make an ecosystem. The Jurassic world was not simply a parade of giants. It was a fully functioning biological network in which the giants played a crucial architectural role. The feeding of massive herds of sauropods shaped the vegetation of entire regions. Their movement patterns compressed soil, created pathways, and distributed nutrients through their waste across landscapes that would otherwise have been inaccessible to decomposition and regrowth. They were not just inhabitants of the Jurassic world, they were engineers of it. And where there are giants, predators evolve to match them. Allosaurus fragilis, the dominant carnivore of the late Jurassic in North America, up to 12 meters long. Approximately 2 metric tons. Its skull was large, but comparatively lightly built, leading researchers to propose that Allosaurus did not rely primarily on a powerful sustained bite the way a modern crocodile does. Instead, biomechanical analysis suggests it used its skull like a hatchet, driving its upper jaw downward into prey with the force of its entire neck and body behind the strike, then withdrawing, waiting for blood loss and shock to do the rest. A hit-and-retreat strategy, applied by a predator the length of a city bus against prey that sometimes weighed 20 times as much. The Jurassic also produced the creature that would eventually prove to be the most consequential dinosaur in the history of this planet. Not because of its size or its power, but because of what it was becoming. Archaeopteryx lithographica. Discovered in Germany in the Solnhofen limestone in 1861. Roughly 150 million years old. A creature approximately the size of a modern raven. It had feathers. It had wings. It had a wishbone, the fused clavicle that birds retain to this day as a structural support for the flight apparatus. But it also had teeth, clawed fingers at the leading edge of its wings, a long bony tail rather than the shortened piger style that supports the tail feathers of modern birds. Archaeopteryx was not fully a bird. It was not fully a dinosaur in the traditional sense. It was a transitional form caught in the geological record at the exact moment when one became the other. The feathered dinosaurs did not evolve flight in a single leap. They moved through stages. From ground-dwelling feathered runners to tree-climbing gliders to sustained powered flyers. Archaeopteryx represents one of those intermediate steps frozen in stone, waiting 150 million years for a scientist to find it and understand what it meant. 145 million years ago, the Jurassic ended, not with the catastrophic extinction that would eventually close the Cretaceous, but with a more gradual transition as climates shifted and sea levels changed. The Cretaceous period opened onto a world in the process of becoming recognizable. The continents were separating further. The Atlantic Ocean was widening. Islands and shallow inland seas divided land masses that had previously been continuous, and an event was occurring in the plant kingdom that would change the character of every ecosystem on Earth. The flowering plants appeared. Angiosperms. The group that today includes everything from oak trees to wheat to roses to the grass beneath your feet. In the early Cretaceous, they were a minor part of the vegetation. By the late Cretaceous, they had spread across the globe and transformed the landscape completely. With them came new insects for pollination, new food sources for herbivores, new ecological structures that favored different body types and different feeding strategies than the coniferous forests of the Jurassic. The dinosaurs adapted. They always adapted. And the Cretaceous produced the forms that define the popular image of the dinosaur age more powerfully than any other period. Triceratops horridus. 3 horns. A massive neck frill of solid bone, a body up to 9 meters long and weighing potentially 12 metric tons. A face that looks designed by an engineer trying to solve the problem of predator defense with maximum commitment and no budget limits. Those horns were not decoration. The brow horns of Triceratops reached over 1 meter in length. Bone surface analysis shows scarring patterns consistent with direct combat, both with predators and with other Triceratops during dominance battles. This was an active defense system, tested regularly against the most dangerous predator its world produced. Pachycephalosaurus wyomingensis, a bipedal dinosaur with a skull roof up to 25 centimeters thick. For decades, the assumption was that these animals used their reinforced skulls as battering rams in head-to-head combat the way bighorn sheep do today. More recent analysis has complicated that picture. Some researchers argue that the skull structure is consistent with flank-butting behavior rather than direct head impact. Others maintain that head-to-head contact was biomechanically possible if not universal. The debate continues. But what nobody disputes is that that skull thickness was selected for a reason. Something about the competitive environment of the late Cretaceous made a 25-centimeter dome of solid bone worth the metabolic investment of growing it. Ankylosaurus magniventris, perhaps the most heavily armored land animal ever to exist. Its entire dorsal surface covered in osteoderms, bony plates embedded directly in the skin. A tail ending in a mass of fused bone that functioned as a club.